You want to know something twisted? Sometimes death becomes the answer to questions you never thought to ask. My name is Rebecca. I'm 23 years old, and this entire disaster began because I was suffocating in my own life. Not the regular kind of restless where you binge television shows until your eyes hurt. No, I mean the soul-crushing monotony where your relationship of 4 years feels like wearing the same unwashed clothes day after day after day. Daniel wasn't terrible as partners go. He managed inventory systems, split every bill down the middle, never forgot important dates. But sweet mercy, the man operated like clockwork, predictable. Identical morning sequences, identical weekend activities, identical discussions about his workday during meals. He had perfected this talent for being so utterly comfortable in our relationship that effort became extinct, like he'd claimed some trophy and maintenance was suddenly optional. The fundamental issue with Daniel is he belonged to that category of men who believe love translates to perpetual autopilot. He'd watch me preparing for work, investing extra minutes on my appearance, and just grin like, "My girl looks nice today." It never crossed his mind to question why I suddenly cared about impressing people at my medical office job. That's precisely my point. He was so confident in us that he became completely blind to everything shifting around him. Ryan joined our team roughly 6 months back, and the atmosphere in that office transformed overnight. He possessed this gift for making everything feel like we shared some secret understanding. When he'd lean across my workspace asking about patient records, I'd catch the scent of his cologne, something costly and intentional, nothing like Daniel's discount aftershave. When he'd message me work-related questions after business hours, they'd mysteriously evolve into discussions about absolutely everything except work. I'm not claiming I orchestrated anything. It developed organically. Ryan would notice my clothing choices, retain small details I'd mentioned casually, inquire about my weekend activities with genuine curiosity. Simple attention that somehow felt groundbreaking after 4 years of being overlooked. Daniel loved me, absolutely, but he loved me the way you love furniture. Dependable, permanently present, requiring zero concern. Ryan observed me like I was actually worth observing. The flirting emerged gradually. Harmless workplace exchanges, casual messages, perhaps lingering a few extra minutes to converse when everyone else departed. I convinced myself it meant nothing because technically nothing physical was occurring. We weren't violating any genuine boundaries, but damn, it felt incredible to feel desired again, to have someone actually absorb my words instead of just bobbing their head while mentally calculating sports statistics. Here's where complications arise. We organized this office gathering. Nothing elaborate, just pizza and beverages after work on a Friday evening. Daniel was supposed to collect me, but he texted last minute saying he was delayed, some crisis with a shipping truck. Typical Daniel, always prioritizing work when it actually affected me. Ryan offered transportation to my apartment. Innocent enough, correct? Except we didn't proceed directly to my place. We stopped at this intimate bar near his apartment just for one beverage. One beverage multiplied into 3, and suddenly we're positioned way too close in the shadowy booth discussing everything. Our aspirations, our disappointments, how we both felt imprisoned in our existences. When he kissed me, I didn't resist him. I should have. but I didn't. It felt like consciousness returning after months of sleep. We made out for approximately 10 minutes before reality infiltrated and I retreated, announced I needed to go home. We comported my today's apartment and remained in his vehicle outside my apartment for another hour, just conversing, gripping hands like adolescents. I climbed upstairs to Daniel, who was unconscious on the sofa with the television still broadcasting. He awakened when I entered, asked how the gathering went, and I said fine. While my lips were still swollen from kissing another man, he didn't notice. He never noticed anything anymore. The guilt persisted about 2 days. Then Ryan messaged me Monday morning with some inside reference about our supervisor, and I was immediately back to experiencing that electricity. We began messaging constantly during lunch intervals, after work, even when Daniel was right beside me. I became proficient at angling my phone away, at maintaining innocent justifications ready. Just work matters, I'd explain when Daniel glanced over, and he'd nod and return to whatever occupied him. Looking backward, I suspect part of me desired discovery. I started exercising less caution, more transparency. I'd smile at my phone in ways I never smiled at Daniel. I'd reference Ryan's name in conversation more than necessary. Ryan believes this. Ryan mentioned that. Testing boundaries. Observing whether Daniel would finally notice. But Daniel just didn't. He trusted me completely, which somehow intensified everything. His trust resembled indifference, like he was so certain of me that I wasn't worth monitoring. That's when I understood I wasn't merely attracted to Ryan, I was furious with Daniel. Furious at his complacency, his assumption that I'd perpetually be there, his complete inability to see that I was disappearing right before him. 3 weeks following that initial kiss, Ryan and I were working late on some patient file reorganization project. Everyone else had departed, the office was silent, and we were isolated with all this tension that had been accumulating for weeks. We weren't even pretending it concerned work anymore. He pulled me into the supply closet. I understand how that sounds, but in the moment, it felt urgent and essential and like the most natural thing in existence. We had sex right there, standing against the wall with boxes of medical supplies surrounding us. It was quick and desperate and completely different from the comfortable, predictable intimacy I experienced with Daniel. Afterward, I felt alive. Guilty, yes, but also more conscious than I'd been in years. Ryan held me for a few minutes, stroking my hair, telling me how long he'd wanted this. We arranged to meet at his place the following week when Daniel would be away for work. I went home that night and Daniel was preparing dinner, humming along to some melody on the radio. He kissed my forehead when I walked in, asked about my day, and I lied so effortlessly. It frightened me. Just busy with the filing project, I said. He nodded, handed me a glass of wine, and started discussing his own day. Same routine, same comfortable distance. That's when I understood the genuine problem wasn't that I'd cheated, it was that cheating felt superior to my actual relationship. With Ryan, I felt desired, interesting, worth pursuing. With Daniel, I felt settled, safe, boring as hell. I started fabricating excuses to work late, to socialize with girlfriends, to run errands that consumed longer than they should. Daniel never questioned any of it. His trust was absolute, which made lying to him almost insultingly simple. I could have announced I was joining the circus, and he probably would have just asked what time I'd return for dinner. Chuckles softly. Then my voice darkens. Ryan and I fell into a routine of our own. Quick encounters at work, extended meetings at his apartment when I could escape. constant messaging that made me feel like I was inhabiting a double life. The concealment was part of the excitement, finally possessing something in my life that felt dangerous and thrilling. I told myself it was just physical, just satisfying a need that Daniel couldn't reach. But really, I was falling for Ryan. Not just the sex, but the way he observed me, the way he made me feel special and chosen. Daniel loved me like a habit. Ryan wanted me like a choice. I should have known Jessica would be the one to expose me. She's always been the perceptive one on our friend circle, the one who notices when someone alters their hairstyle or loses weight. We were all out for beverages, me, Jessica, Morgan, and a few other girls from high school. I thought I was being subtle, but apparently I kept checking my phone and smiling. "Who's got you grinning like that?" Jessica asked, and I claimed it was just Daniel being sweet. But then Ryan texted something flirtatious about missing me, and I guess my face betrayed me because Jessica's expression transformed completely. She cornered me in the bathroom 20 minutes later. "Becca, what the hell is happening?" she demanded. "You're acting strange, you're on your phone constantly, and you definitely weren't smiling about Daniel." I attempted denial, but Jessica is like a dog with a bone when she senses drama. She kept pushing until I finally broke down and revealed everything about Ryan, about how unhappy I'd been with Daniel, and about how alive I felt when I was with someone who actually saw me. She was horrified. "Becca, you need to tell Daniel, this is so messed up." But I begged her not to say anything, promised I would handle it myself, told her it was complicated, and she didn't understand. She reluctantly agreed to keep quiet, but I could tell she was judging me hard. The next few weeks were torture. Jessica kept giving me these disappointed looks whenever we hung out. She'd make little comments about respect in relationships and treating people right. I started avoiding group hangouts because I couldn't deal with her silent disapproval. Meanwhile, things with Ryan were getting more intense. He started talking about us being together for real, about me leaving Daniel. Part of me wanted that, the excitement, the passion, the feeling of being truly wanted. But another part of me was terrified. Daniel and I had constricted an entire life together. We shared friends, shared routines, shared plans for the future. I was stuck between two worlds, and the stress was consuming me. I started snapping at Daniel over trivial things, initiating fights about dishes and schedules, and nothing that genuinely mattered. I think I was trying to make him angry enough to break up with me so I wouldn't have to make the choice myself. But Daniel just absorbed it all with that same patient understanding that had driven me to cheat in the first place. He'd apologize for leaving dishes in the sink, promise to be better about communication, ask what he could do to help. Sarcastically, his willingness to accept blame for my bad mood only made me angrier. The girls' trip was supposed to be my opportunity to figure things out. 3 days in Vegas with Jessica and Morgan. Some distance from both Daniel and Ryan to clear my head. But of course, Ryan and I were messaging the whole time, and I ended up telling the girls everything during a wine-fueled confession session on our second night. Morgan was supportive in that messy, intoxicated way. Follow your heart. Life's too short. All that sounds profound when you're 3 drinks in. But Jessica was furious. She said I was being selfish and cruel, that Daniel deserved better, that I needed to either end things with Ryan or break up with Daniel immediately. I got defensive, started saying things about how she didn't understand, how her relationship with her boyfriend was different, how easy it was to judge when you'd never been in my situation. The fight got ugly fast. Jessica called me a coward and a cheater. I called her a judgmental who was probably just jealous that someone actually wanted me. We barely spoke for the rest of the trip. The flight home was awkward as hell, and I knew Jessica was done with my drama. I also knew she was probably going to tell Daniel everything, which terrified me. I got home Sunday night to find Daniel making my favorite dinner. excited to hear about my trip. He'd cleaned the apartment, bought flowers, even gotten that wine I like from the expensive store. All this effort for someone who'd spent the weekend talking about leaving him. I almost confessed right then. The guilt was overwhelming, seeing how happy he was to have me home, how much he'd missed me. But then my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan asking when he could see me, and I remembered why I'd been unhappy in the first place. That night, lying in bed next to Daniel while he slept, I made my decision. I was going to break up with him. Not necessarily for Ryan, but because I couldn't keep living this lie. I deserved to be with someone who excited me, and Daniel deserved someone who appreciated his steady, reliable love. I planned to do it the next evening after work. I'd rehearsed the speech in my head, how we'd grown apart, how we wanted different things, how it wasn't anyone's fault, clean and simple and as painless as possible. But Jessica beat me to it. Daniel called me at work Tuesday afternoon. His voice was different, flat and cold in a way I'd never heard before. "We need to talk when you get him," he said. And I knew immediately that Jessica had told him everything. I tried to explain, to control the narrative, but Daniel had already heard the whole story. Jessica hadn't just told him about Ryan, she'd told him about my complaints, my resentment, my plans to leave him. Every private thing I'd shared in confidence had been laid out for him to examine. The conversation was brutal. Daniel wasn't angry the way I expected. He was disappointed, which was somehow worse. He said he'd always known I was pulling away, but hoped it was just a phase. He said he'd been planning to propose next month, had already bought a ring. That hit me like a punch to the stomach. A proposal. The future I'd been so ready to throw away was right there, and I'd destroyed it for what? Some excitement? Some validation from a coworker who probably told his friends about our supply closet encounters. Daniel moved out that week. Just gathered his things methodically, divided up our shared belongings, and left. No drama, no begging, no fighting. Just done. The apartment felt enormous and empty without him. I thought Ryan would be thrilled, but when I told him Daniel and I had broken up, he got weird. Started talking about taking things slow, not wanting to be a rebound, needing to focus on his career. All the things guys say when they realize the fantasy is about to become reality and they're not actually ready for it. Within a month, Ryan had transferred to another branch, said it was a better opportunity, but I knew he was running from the mess we'd created. I was left with nothing. No boyfriend, no affair partner, no best friend who trusted me with secrets. The worst part was watching Daniel move on. He started going to the gym, picked up hobbies he'd talked about for years but never had time for. He looked better, healthier, like breaking up with me had freed him to become the person he was supposed to be. 2 years later, I heard through mutual friends that Daniel was engaged to someone he'd met at a volunteer event, some nurse who worked with kids at the children's hospital. They'd been together for over a year before he proposed, taking his time, making sure it was right. The kind of thoughtful approach I'd never appreciated when we were together. I tried dating, but every guy I met felt like a pale imitation of what I'd had with Daniel or what I thought I had with Ryan. I destroyed the best relationship of my life for a fantasy that evaporated the moment it became real. Jessica never spoke to me again. Morgan stayed neutral for a while, but eventually drifted away. I lost my entire friend group, my relationship, and my self-respect in one spectacular implosion. The real kicker? Ryan died 3 years after our affair ended. Some autoimmune thing that had been brewing for a while. I found out through Facebook, saw his family posting about his battle with illness, how brave he'd been. I felt nothing. Maybe a little vindicated that the universe had handled him for me, but mostly just empty. I'd blown up my entire life for a man who was already dying and didn't even know it. A man who ran away the moment things got complicated. A man who was never worth what I gave up. Look, I know how this sounds. I know I was the one who cheated, who lied, who destroyed a good thing because I was bored and selfish. But here's what nobody talks about. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to figure out who you really are. I just wish I'd known the price before I lit the match. Daniel's married now, probably happier than he ever was with me. And I'm learning to live with the choices I made, even if they led me here, alone in an apartment that still feels too big, working a job that reminds me daily of the biggest mistake of my life. Between us, I don't regret wanting more. Sure, I regret the lying and the cheating and the way I hurt someone who loved me, but I don't regret choosing excitement over security, passion over comfort. Maybe that makes me a terrible person, but at least I'm real about it. The truth is, some people are meant for steady love, and some people need fire. I just picked the wrong fire and got burned. But I'd rather live with scars than die of boredom, you know?